All right.
Hi, Lily. Hi, Kirk.
Hi, my name is Lilia Fontana. I am the Executive Director of Firehouse Projects, and I am with Kirk Whipple, the Executive Director of the Unconservatory. And we have a wonderful special guest that you just heard playing. His name is W.A. Mathieu, better known as Allaudin, and he is a composer, pianist, educator, and author. He has a new book out called The Shrine Thief. In this entrancing memoir, timeless questions about art and life are explored by a master musician in his 86th year. The stern father who built an empire of words, the solipsistic uncle whose hypnotic voice calmed millions. These are just early glimpses of Matthew's journey. Soon he is crammed into an overhead baggage rack in Stan Keaton's tour bus as scenes of scotch-soaked melancholy play out below, sharing late-night gallons of ice cream with Duke Ellington in his hotel room, co-inventing improvisational theater at Chicago's Second City with Alan Arkin and Mike Nichols, receiving the title of Sufi Sheikh from an heir of Inayat Khan, and gleaning wisdom from a woman bundling firewood in Bali. In prose, at once wry and lyrical, W.A. Mathieu carries the reader through the adventures and misadventures of a scintillating and deeply examined life. So, before we get into the book, why don't I invite Kirk and Al to chat and maybe give us some anecdotes of their friendship and history together?
I'd like to start, with your permission, quick, and
Absolutely.
say how we met.
Please.
Kirk is the only student I've ever had that I approached, one might say, that I actually said, you should study with me, is the only person that I've ever wanted to do that with. And the situation was this: my daughter, then 17, now 52, God, was in a high school play, a high school production of a course line. And Kirk was damn near a one-man band. He had keyboard, he was conducting, he was wrestling the score. There were a few, I don't know how many, maybe 8 musicians. Kirk was playing all the missing parts and improvising what he couldn't get his hands on. And it was a tour de force. And I almost missed my daughter watching Kirk perform this miracle of technical ability and support for the kids. And so I went down and he introduced myself, and he told me a couple of things about him, and I said, you should study with me, and that was our introduction. That's the only time I've ever done that. And he's been my loyal student, very, very advanced, quite gifted, maybe the best one I've ever had. And we've continued long past the student relationship into a collegial relationship, which is extremely rewarding on all fronts. And he and Marilyn have been playing. His wife and partner have been playing my music for decades, it seems. Several recordings and 2 more coming. So it's a very long and productive friendship. Okay, Kirk, what's your version of that?
I'm done. I'm out of here.
Over, right?
Well, no, I'll never forget it too, because I've never been approached by somebody to be a student, and fortunately, I had the foresight to say yes. And I'll concur with Alex. It has really been just an amazing journey together that we've been on with all of the musical things that we've done together. And yes, I thought I'd put this picture since she's not with me. There's my wife and also our partners in France that formed the United Nations Piano Quartet. What's kind of fun about the meeting was that Al's daughter Amy was playing the part in the show Morales. And
That's right.
and so when I met Marilyn in Portland, Maine, not too long after that, I made a huge mistake. I said, "Oh, Morales, you're from Puerto Rico, right?" And being a very proud Cuban, she says, "I'm from Cuba. Do you know where that is, gringo?" So after that, our lives were inexorably intertwined, and yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about an upcoming project. I'm happy and proud to say, but enough about me. This is about my dear Uncle Al, I like to call him, and his new book, The Shrine Thief.
Well, there's some stories that are better left untold, actually.
Nice.
Only to say that we spend a lot of time at night on the horn working about 48% of the time. The rest is involved with ribald jokes and immoderate laughter.
Yes.
And drunken bravado, other behaviors, which are either the dark side or the very bright side of being artists together in the same life.
And to remind us, I suppose, of what we would have been doing at ages 5 and 6 if we had a vocabulary back then.
Or if when I was 5, you were minus 15, buddy.
Right. No, but yeah, there's I'll share one little story too. A piece that I wrote, a set called Elemental Portraits, Nocturnes for Two Pianos, and they're each is dedicated to someone special in my life. One of them is dedicated to Allaudin, and this one was called Uncle Al's Cloudscape. And the inspiration for the piece came, the mood of the piece came from a little story that he told me. His studio in Sebastopol, California, very lovely. It's up on top of a verdant hill, lots of trees.
Not this room.
No, you're right. He's in his house.
No internet up on the studio, so it's not this room. It's a very beautiful space up there.
Yeah, the studio, it's a very safe space. The world cannot intrude unless there's an accident on the freeway outside, but or the highway. But so he told me this story that he was one day walking up in the middle of his busy life, thinking many thoughts, and the world was closing in a little bit. He looked up in the sky and he saw a cloud in the shape of a quarter rest. And he said, I took that as a sign. I stopped, took a nice big deep breath, and then I continued up the hill. So the mood of the piece, Uncle Al's Cloudscape, is a very peaceful one, hence the inspiration.
Forgot that one. I'm just wondering why there's not many anecdotes that we can tell that aren't directly about work. We've been hard at work for many years, doing things that are mutual. One of the things that I should mention,
yep,
great gratitude to Kirk. I wrote a book called Harmonic Experience, which is known by a certain population as the Bible of music theory. I said with total humility, having written the Bible. So what Kirk did was put about 1,000 examples of music and graphics
Wow.
into Pro Tools when Pro Tools was definitely beta version,
Actually,
and
Finale.
not Pro Tools,
Finale.
Finale, excuse me, and uh, that that book took 3 years to write, and Kirk, a highly developed musician at the time, uh, was kind of a check for me because he understood the theory as well as anyone else at the time, and there were a lot of things that I really wondered about whether they were effective to put in the book or pure tautology. They're just I've just proved something that proves itself, and I had to have another set of ears that I trusted, and Kirk has been that for quite a while.
Well, and
So
I'll dive in about that too, because the title harmonic experience is most apt, because basically each of the passages in the book that discuss specific parts of harmonic language, you have to hear it for yourself. You have to experience it for it to be real. And unlike there are other tautologies that are out there infecting colleges and universities, which say this is this because of course it works like this, and it really doesn't. And we could come up with dozens of examples in various books, which we're not going to bore our audience with today. But that one title, the harmonic experience, you have to hear it for yourself to understand it. And there were I remember a few times in the book where I said, okay, I've got to sit down and listen to this. And at a certain point, the oh yeah moments just kept on coming. And so that I agree. I like to say that he's written the Bible of harmonic theory, because there's nothing out there that really takes people through in a very personal, experiential way that can be gotten. Now, that having been said, I like to tell people, read his other books first. The Musical Life, and he's written some other books too he can list. But when you get to harmonic experience, it's going to take you about 10 years to, if you read it properly and do all of the exercises and really hear it. So
it's taken me about 50. I still don't hear it. Try to hear everything in my book. The basic idea of the book is that music is not a thing out there that you learn. It's not an object which has a kind of objective delineation, which you can describe by various descriptors and parameters. It's a thing inside that you gradually realize and grow, and the outside description may or may not help you. It's like any other book. If it's true for you, it's true. That's what Kabir said 700 years ago, and it's true. A thing isn't true until it's true for you. And so that makes it different from any other harmony book. And this book, The Shrine Thief, Finding Wisdom in a Life of Music, treats the subject of wisdom the same way. It's not a thing out there. It's something that grows from an inner life, from an inner knowing. And you have to be a seeker in the same way that you have to be a seeker for music, the workings of music. You have to want to know how it works, and then you're able to learn. And you have to be a seeker of wisdom and other refined qualities. And if you are, you could go to all the holy writ in the world and all the experiences of the world, but it will come to you eventually, because what's true is true, and what's not true isn't true. And to approach music that way is very refreshing for people.
I'll jump in too because I said something about harmonic experience that makes me think. One of the my quick little sound bites that I always like to say about it is that it's it's not the trip. It's a roadmap. It can help you. It can help you get there, but your trip is your own trip.
It's, I wonder if what you're saying with the music and the wisdom, can you explain it further in terms of what is wisdom in per se? And you have it linked to music. So what is that wisdom in music? Because I'm a visual art person, and people have their own wisdom in whatever subject or whatever interest they have. I wonder if you can discuss that a little bit more.
Lily, what's your best medium as an
Well,
artist?
Multimedia, but my training at Pratt Institute in New York is photography.
How do you know when a picture's done?
It's magic. And I've always found it, photography to me, and that's what I majored in, was magical. And it was something inside me that said this works and this doesn't work.
Right. Okay. That's the way it is really for any creative art, including music. And that's the way it is for the inner life too. Wait, I like this one a lot. Terry Riley and Pandit Pranath, my North Indian guru. Look at the light of that picture. The light is the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ain't that something?
And it accentuates his hair, his beard.
Yeah, yeah. You see the relationship.
In the moment of joy.
Yes.
Yeah. Ecstasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the magic. How did I learn that? Oh, how many rolls of film did I go through? How many hours in the darkroom? I had a darkroom when I was 10. My dad built it for me. And that just goes on and on and on. The same thing in music. Whatever medium that you have some skill in or you've discovered the magic in, there it is. You listen to everybody, take what you need, leave the rest.
Yeah.
And eventually you become the teacher.
And
that's the way it works. That's what evolution is. That's the individual evolution we go through, which is a picture of the evolution of the universe. It's a bunch of gas, and then it's, people talking in a podcast.
and the corollary.
It's still a bunch of gas.
Well, and that's it. The corollary in music, of course, is you have to, as you're writing and you think you're inspired, and at a certain point you go, no, this is just a bunch of gas. Forget this. And something better comes up, and oh wow, this is good gas now.
Yeah, so to speak.
Better gas.
The same thing is true of writing. Incidentally, I am not a writer by training. I've never taken a writing class except by accident one time, and it's just something that you keep doing, and you read. And I've been deeply influenced by really good writers, mostly female writers, it turns out. Annie Dillard, Jane Hirschfield, but also Coleman Barks, the Rumi poet, and Robert Bly, and Hemingway, of course. Did I say that? And those people just taught me how to write. And I married an editor. Nice choice.
Good one.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah. And a beautiful mezzo soprano. That's the same person. And you just learn it. If you really want to know the essence of something, the thing in it that cannot be described, this magic, exactly as you say. You just do exactly what you did with photography. You just keep at it, and eventually uh, John Dewey, the educator, says education is hanging around until you get the point. In Buddhism, I'll show you this picture that I'm proud of too. Hang on there. Here it is. I love this. In Buddhism, there's a thing called pointing out, because the teacher can't do. The teacher can model perfect behavior in their life that is shown as an outer life, but you can't. Information is not learning. It's never learning. Even in information theory, information is not learning. Learning is an intuitive thing. It's a magic, and so the Buddhists have a say you can point to the moon, but it's not the moon, and that's what language does. It points, and this is in a chapter called "The Isness Business" of the Shrine Theme. There's this photograph.
Yes.
There's a hippie woman I knew. Maybe pointing to a hawk. Who knows?
Yeah.
She might be pointing to a quarter rest in the sky. Who knows?
But there's joy on the child's face.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's a magical age.
Oh, yeah. Well, every age is a magical age.
But what's interesting too is that one piece of mine that was an interesting failure in after the work during the work towards the end of Harmonic Experience, Allaudin asked me to gave me the honor of publishing a short piece in the book of my own.
Demonstrated one of the processes in the book.
Yeah, as a magic mode piece, coincidentally.
So called. It's a piece which stays in one key, but uses all of the possibilities that are available without losing the home note. That's called a magic scale for reasons that are apparent in the book. And I wrote one, and I wanted another one in another key just to show it that it could be done in any key. Sorry, Kirk, go ahead.
No, quite all right. And I wrote what I thought was a very, very nice piece, and it exhibited the necessary qualities of the exercise. And
which it did. It did. But
however, Al said, but you know something, Whipple? It's just too hard for most people to play.
And he wrote a virtuoso piece. The book is not for virtuosi exclusively; it's for beginners too.
So I wrote another one that actually is much easier to play. It's still a challenge. It's kind of an intermediate piece. But the interesting thing about this is that years go by, and as I'm getting looking at both of these pieces, I need to put the one that went into the book and the one that didn't go into the book together somehow. And so what I did, then I wrote a middle movement just recently, and so now it's a little 3-movement magic mode inspired suite, sonatine is what I've called it. And the last movement, interestingly enough, I've only just now discovered how hard it is, because I'd never performed the piece, but when I started practicing, I realized there's some musical things in this, and some technical demands, but more the musical demands that are much more difficult than that younger composer ever imagined. And now so it took me 30 years to learn my own piece.
Sounds about right.
And I'm the better for it. If I would have put it out then, it would have been flashy, or who knows. But some small adjustments that have been made in the piece. Now I'm very, very happy with the piece. So it's the search for wisdom continues.
You betcha.
I was going to say, I sometimes wonder that you get to a point where I think when you get to you live long enough, you experience long enough life. I think I just turned 70,
Good
and
heavens.
and I and I am at a point where I feel so much more in control of my life and so much at peace with my life than I've ever had before. And then I sometimes think, okay, then maybe tomorrow I'll die, because maybe I think I got to the point where, I think this is what life is. Like, and I'll throw in, my son used to be all over the place, jumping around in elementary school, and he wouldn't do homework, and I would go nuts sitting him down, and he kept saying, I need to play, mommy, but I need to play. And I finally said to him, Dax, life is a game. Learn how to play the game. And when he went to middle school, I don't know what he experienced. One day he came home and said, I found out how to play. And sure enough, my God, he has. He really, really has. He's going on his second master's. He's working. I mean, he's on track.
I can't believe what you claimed your age was, but in any case, um, you definitely look way, way younger than that. And
Thank
I
you.
maybe it's because you have found this place where uh, the purpose that we're here begins to emerge. It is emergent, and it it seems to uncover more and more. You're not done, sweetheart.
Well, I really don't expect to be done, but I still feel that I have so much more to do. Um,
I feel that way too. I'm 17 years your elder, and I every day is like, boy, I never used to understand that before, but I was just a kid. Now I get it.
yeah,
That which would be yesterday,
Yeah.
and and so when that keeps happening, it's very, very satisfying.
yeah, yeah,
Proof that you're on the right path.
Yeah, it feels that way to us unconscious beings talking to you, but yeah, it feels that way.
Well, and hey, speaking of the right path, we have a project that we're involved in right now
yeah.
coming up.
I didn't introduce it. We were engaged in some other things, but yes. Speaking of that, yes, you need to talk about the project that you guys are doing.
Okay, I want to stop and read a passage from my book first. I'd like to read a passage about my meeting with Duke Ellington when I was about 22, and this would be in 1937. Or maybe I was 23. This would be in 1960. So at the date of this podcast, that's 44 years ago. That's 64 years ago. That's a bunch of time. And I was extremely ambitious at the time, and I had written at a very young age, 21, for Stan Kenton, and he was the big white jazz band of the country, most famous and uh, making the most advanced and beautiful music. I did write for him. I managed to write a certain kind of music, and he made a recording of it called Standards in Silhouette. They're my arrangements. So I was kind of the uh, kid prodigy of jazz writing at the time. And I became very disillusioned with the band, especially the life on the band bus full of beer and porno magazines and behaviors that I found foreign to me at the time. And Stan recognized my dissatisfaction. I was playing trumpet with the band. And he let me go, and I was glad. But we'd given each other a lot. It was a very good encounter. We met years later, and it was wonderful closure. And with almost unbelievable chutzpah, I said to Stan as a parting shot, will you write me a letter of recommendation to Duke Ellington, who was the black band of the country, the most respected with the most progressive and beautiful arrangements. And so he did. He must have written a great letter. I called up Duke Ellington, and he said, because no white person had ever written for his band, ever. He said, well, sure, you can write for my band. So I did. I set up a bunch of arrangements, and I said I would, after a certain period, I called him, I said, I'm ready. He paid my plane fare from Chicago to Pittsburgh, where they were performing. And we had a rehearsal, and the arrangements were terrible. I had never learned the repertoire of the band or the raison d'etre of the band, why it was actually existed as a cultural institution for basically the joyous and victorious survival of slavery, that it was. And I had no idea. And I got there, and the music was a bunch of white crap, which I was foisting off on the band, trying to put my music into the Ellington imprint. And it was rejected quite politely, in some cases not quite politely, by the band. Duke said nothing. And at the end of the rehearsal, he said, stay for our concert. So I did, and there was a concert, and the house filled up with mostly black people. And it wasn't like a Stan Kenton concert where a bunch of college kids are screaming. It's closer to Taylor Swift. And everybody's going nuts, and Stan's being Stan. And we're playing all this high brass music, which was very exciting, actually. But it wasn't like that at all. It was like a picnic, family gathering. Everybody knew everybody. It was like Duke was just playing for his family. 1,500 people from Pittsburgh. It was incredibly familiar to everyone and homey. And there I was up the balcony watching. So after the concert, Duke got very busy with some white businessmen in the auditorium after everybody had left, and I was sitting there waiting for him. And it was quite late, and he said, let's get you a room at my hotel, and we'll have some dinner, and we'll talk. I thought that was extremely kind of him after my stunt, for him to do that. And so we went to his hotel, and the guy behind the desk said, I'm sorry, Mr. Ellington, we don't serve white people. And Duke argued and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Ellington, that's our policy. Mr. Ellington said, oh, okay, he's my guest. Well, they're not going to argue with that. So I'm Duke Ellington's guest. We go into this old Victorian room, a suite, because he lived luxuriously, of a fading inner city hotel, once elegant, of course. And there's a couch in an anteroom and a bedroom and a bathroom. And it's nice. It's very nice. It's kind of sweet. And so by that time, it's quite late. It's after midnight. So Duke calls room service, and the restaurant's closed. They say, I'm sorry, Mr. Ellington, it's closed. And so I'll read from this point on. Can I read for like 10 minutes?
Sure.
Sure. Absolutely. The floor is yours.
Okay. So at this point, we're both famished. Duke says, "Get me the restaurant. Somebody's got to be there." So the cleaning guy answers, and we're both famished. So here's the text. We're both famished. Closed could not possibly be a real word, and Duke shows his impatience. Is there no food? There's got to be food in your restaurant. Go look, he demands of the clerk. Long, empty pause. And, there's just the cleanup man, sir. Connect us. Pause. Yes, sir? This is Duke Ellington in room 319. What have you got in the kitchen? Everything's locked up till morning, Mr. Ellington. Certainly you can find something to eat in a hotel restaurant kitchen. No, sir. No food, only ice cream. There's no lock on the ice cream case. What flavors? Vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry, sir. Duke doesn't miss a beat. Send them up. How much do you want of each, sir? How much you got? They're all in 5-gallon containers, sir. This time a slight crescendo. Send them up. Dirk tunes to me and says, I hope you like ice cream. I love it. Me too. Duke seems actually happy. He's made the best of it. I go to the bathroom. When I get back, the cleanup man himself has appeared with 3 5-gallon tubs on his cart and is placing them on the coffee table along with 2 spoons, 2 cloth napkins. Duke tips him $5 that he did not give to one of the band members who was he wanted to buy some liquor. He positions himself on the sofa, centered exactly between the 3 tubs, beckons me to bring up a comfortable chair across from him, hands me a napkin and a spoon. I see the vanilla tub is a quarter full, the chocolate tub not quite half, and the strawberry is mostly full. What's your favorite? I ask. I like 'em all, he says, diving deep into the chocolate with a decisive downbeat. I pull up close and start with the vanilla. It's now 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting in a 19th century hotel suite facing 7 gallons of ice cream. Why does it say 7? Oh, because I see, because they're 5-gallon tubs, facing 7 gallons of ice cream and a stocking-headed icon. He had worn a stocking cap for his hair. And a stocking-headed icon of American jazz. Ellington is in his young 60s, old enough to be my first jazz teacher's father, older than Stan Kenton by half a generation. a few years older than my dad. I am 22 and in some ways considerably younger than my age. As we suck up the creamy cold, our actual meeting begins. Duke starts asking me questions about my upbringing, my parents, my education, to college. These are probing questions. He actually wants to know. I tell him about my father's publishing life, his bifurcated ambitions for his only son, my mother's reliable support, and about Buddy Hiles, a lot about Buddy Hiles, my first jazz teacher, black man, who really taught me music, and Buddy's nightclub. Yes, Duke has been there more than once. And my times at the Cincinnati Cotton Club, where Duke started playing in the 1930s. I tell it because I was part of my black teacher's entourage, and I got that education from him. I tell him about my vitriolic fourth grade teacher, Miss Lucky, throwing books at the black Gertrude Turner, the only black student in the school, about our segregated high school swimming pool, and about our servants. Yes, our servants. Face to face with Duke, I find myself suddenly able to articulate how invisible our ingrained entitlement has appeared to me in my milieu. He asks about the University of Chicago and its idiosyncrasies, my alma mater, about Bill Russo, my jazz teacher, and in college, and especially about working with Stan Kenton. Duke is truly asking, looking at me kindly and earnestly. I think he wants to learn what he can from this talented, clueless cub. Despite my passion for declaring myself, I'm not sure he knows what to make of me. As the conversation goes on, I'm wary that the gulf might be mutual. Most of the people Duke knows are gifted in some way, but they also share much common ground with him. I come to him on the bounce from across the big band railroad tracks. I know he's bound to a code of professional courtesy to his white doppelganger, Stan Kenton. Perhaps these are merely self-doubts, my growing confrontation with my own racial and social values. Meanwhile, as we continue dipping into the ice cream, rotating flavors, the questions keep coming. Duke shows nothing but genuine curiosity. I don't know what to ask him in return that hasn't already been answered in 1,000 interviews. Across the vats, I study Duke Ellington's face. He's tired, but wide awake. His focus on me is unwavering, his clarity unmistakable. And here, again, as I've seen many times in great men, I see that light around the body. Duke appears truly generous, and not just to me. That $5 tip may have been more than the cleanup man's salary for the day. But he is, like Stan Kenton, like my father, like me, a hungry man. A hunger we cannot discuss, but freely share. That hunger is the sturdy bridge over the moat. Given our singular dinner rations for this evening, we are full up as we can manage. But now the coffee table is a mess. The tubs are half liquid, and both of us are sticky and tired. Duke gets up from the couch and says, "When you wake up in the morning, I'll be gone. In 2 weeks, we'll be in Las Vegas. Call me then." He nods good night, disappears behind his door. I'm suddenly so exhausted and loaded that I don't even wash up. I roll my trousers up for a pillow, lie down on the couch with a thin coverlet, and immediately fade to black. By morning, the large room is full of light. Duke is cleared out. I put on my pants, wash my hands and face, catch an airport cab, fly back to Chicago to my life. By 9 p.m., I am sitting at my stage left, Spin It, playing The Second City, my theater troupe, into action. I assumed Duke was done with me. We hadn't discussed the music I'd written for his band. There didn't seem a need to be. But after 2 weeks, I made the call anyway, and he seemed happy to hear from me. He suggested I provide new arrangements for the band's core repertoire. Since we're tired of the old ones, we need new ones, he said. We agreed on 2 titles, and I had promised to send the arrangements. As I thought about it later, I realized that Duke had rejected my attempts at forging his band into my own compositional voice simply by silently not accepting them, then giving me some time to internalize the band's actual voice. Since new wine in old bottles would be actually useful to him, and I had a good track record as an arranger, his suggestion was worth a try. The 2 classics were I'm Beginning to See the Light and It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. In the midst of preparing songs for a new review for the theater, I wrote these 2 arrangements very quickly. The ideas flowed naturally from my new appreciation for what I was asked to do. The variations on the old motifs, the new harmonies, the instrumental voicings, the selections of soloists, yes, including Johnny Hodges on alto, and especially the climactic shout courses, all came easily. They were good-feeling songs, and I wanted keenly to be part of the band's good feeling. In 3 weeks, the arrangements were finished, the scores proofed, the cards neatly copied out, and the package mailed special delivery. For 3 months, I heard nothing. Nor did I expect to. But in early June, the phone rang. "This is Duke Ellington. We just finished recording 2 of your arrangements for Columbia Records. You'll be getting a test pressing in the mail from their office in a couple of weeks. I hope you like what we've done." Astonished, I thanked him, and when the test disc arrived and I'd listened to it, I was even more astonished. What I'd written had been expanded considerably. The tempi were much faster than I'd heard in my head, but the most significant change was wryly suggested by the album's title, Piano in the Background. The title was evidently meant as a euphemism. Ellington's exquisitely tasteful piano playing, which historically has indeed been mostly in the background, was featured prominently in this album. In my 2 arrangements especially, Duke plays abundantly, like the brilliant soloist he is, with economy, wit, commanding authority over the music's scope. I gradually came to realize that Duke had reshaped my music with the spirit of collaboration that had characterized the band from the very beginning. I'd given him a yard to play in. He'd done some creative landscaping, and he and his band proceeded to play marvelously within. At the high point of one of the shout courses, someone, probably Duke, emits a high shout of joy that remains to this day a jewel in my heart. I do think it's the voice of Duke himself, but does it matter? What I carry with me most is the model of guidance that Duke planted in my own later teaching. An ideal of patience, discernment, and faith in the outcome. Only recently have I been able to identify with Duke's compassionate gaze upon the young boy I was, and with his ongoing skillful guidance. He saw me as I was. He did not judge me. Then he let me do the real work, the inner work on my own, and was willing to wager the time and effort of his men that I would come through. In a subsequent phone call, I asked Duke, what's next? He suggested some things, but I never wrote anything more for Duke Ellington's band and never tried to reconnect with him. Ellington had given me a fundamental life lesson, and I had given him a little something he could use. Fair trade, curtain. Duke first had taken the time to clearly read me, an arrogant young man from far away. When he listened to my music, he said nothing. When he listened to me talk as we measured out spoons of ice cream, he said nothing. When he'd given me exactly the work I could do for our mutual benefit, he said nothing. The music said everything. The entire vibe of transmission was so subtle, so subterranean, so psychologically and musically skillful that it has taken me many decades to appreciate the whole of it. In fact, I hadn't until really now, finding out for the first time the story of those long gone Duke days. And back to your magic.
That's a magic story.
How did I find the magic in music? That was one of my teachers. That was one of my Cartier-Bressons. That was one of my Stieglitzes.
Are there other stories like this? And I'm sure there are.
Dozens and dozens. The first came from my parents and my family. I had a crazy famous uncle, and I learned a bunch of things from him. He was a maven of dance teaching and relaxation training. Sort of Zen guy who was nuts and mean. I learned a lot from him, and from my sister, especially later in life. I learned a lot from journal writing, and then going back over my journal and seeing what I was actually saying. I learned a great deal from Kenton, who was a teacher in his own right, of course from Duke. I learned a tremendous amount from taking acid, going on a really crazy trip, winding up in Cook County Jail and embracing the prisoners. That was a great teacher for me. I was in the theater for 15 years, the beginning of improvisatory training for actors. I was the musician. And I learned from one of the great teachers of theater what improvisation could do for theater, and I extrapolated that to music and composition, which Kirk can lecture and carry on about for hours, I'm sure. As can I. I met
Let
a
me
Sufi
carry on for a couple of seconds here for viewers, because the pieces that were interjected in between the reading and actually the other music that's here today performed by Allaudin are improvisations, which means essentially created upon the spot.
There's a cartoon I really love. As a tenor saxophone player, he's playing in the subways, busking, right? And his case is open and some coins in it, just playing, like, you know. And as a kid, 6-year-old boy, he's like absolutely mesmerized. And his mother's pulling on his T-shirt. It says, "Billy, come along. That's not real music. He's just making it up." Moving right along. I learned from my family. I don't discuss them much, but I have a chapter of a journal I kept when we took on a long trip when the kids were young. I've had many spiritual teachers, some of them chauvinists, frauds, some of them the real thing. And I discussed that. I've learned a tremendous amount by asking the question, what is existence? Why are we here? What is this? And I talk about that. It's, for me, the best chapter in the book, actually. It's full of stories. And mostly I've learned from my father what life is and is not. And I went to Bali, and that was one of the best lessons I ever learned. We stayed for 6 weeks in the rice fields, watched the workers work for 6 weeks, and I saw what an entitled person I was. I couldn't stand being a tourist any longer. Thought if I lived in Bali, I'd have to work the rice fields. I couldn't do this anymore. Sitting there above in a balcony watching the workers, it was disgusting to me. So that was great wisdom. I've befriended some of the great writers of the age, including Coleman Barks, poet, Robert Bly. I courted them, and they became, especially Coleman, became friends. And by emulating them and using them as a model for myself, I learned to write just by being with them and letting them read my writing sometimes, comment on it. And then there's story after story after story about my music teachers, finally. Buddy Hiles, black guy, my early white teacher who was terrible. And then a series of great masters. Bill Russo was a good jazz writer. Easley Blackwood, who was a very fine composer and an extraordinary theorist. He taught me what I needed to learn about classical music over a long period of time. And then my main musical guy, Pandit Pranath, North Indian guru, and I learned raga. I studied raga for 25 years. Many stories about him. That's where the real juice came in. And my friend Hamza Eldin, a Nubian singer of music of his culture, became a sort of world citizen and a close friend of mine for 30 years before he died. All these people are dead, everyone. And I sought their wisdom and I sought their modeling. Particularly Hamza, I saw the African way of teaching, which is by indirection. You talk about letting finding the magic for yourself. The Africans divert you. You ask a question, they'll tell you the opposite of the truth. They keep going around and around until finally you just shrug and find it for yourself. So it's very, very carefully guided.
How do you feel that these experiences, like you just said, different cultures, how do you think that has influenced your music specifically?
In a certain sense, it is my music. I mean, I've inspired, I've taken in all of this mastery through sound. And for years, I was worried about, jack of all trades, master of none. But I've learned that it's jack of all trades, master of yourself. And my music does not sound like a pastiche to me, and I don't think it does to others. It just sounds like my music. It's, I think of us as being like a sieve. Stuff comes in, and certain things are strained out. The rest goes off to the left, and you just keep what you keep because it's nourishing. And then it becomes part of you. You don't think about it as having come from separate sources. The other absolute answer to your question is that all this teaching is the same. At the core, wisdom is the same in every wisdom teaching. And it's a way of being awake to who you are. And as a 70-year-old, is precisely what you now describe as accepting the world for what it is and moving right along. The Buddhists say, be kind. They also say that when you are fully awake, compassion arises. It arises. It's part of the way the world is. And that's the core teaching of all of this. Look at Duke's compassion for this little squirrely cub. And the way Stan just let me hang on there until I wrote something of value for him. And all of my teachers just, Easley Blackwood just shook his head when I asked him to be my student, because from the League of Geniuses that he came from, I was pitiful. But he saw my creativity. I also supplied him with dope. So he became my teacher. He was a college professor. You were supposed to smoke weed in those days if you were a college professor. But hey, man.
Requirement.
No problem where I did. And so lit a marijuana. He gave me a lesson every week for 5 years. And I really, really learned the tradition by simply getting stoned and watching him practice the repertoire. Classical repertoire from Bach to Worden and Boulez. Just really mastery at my living room there, in my basement apartment with my Steinway, just listening to him go through his own life of mastery. I'm sitting there, ask questions, we get funny, we have conversations. He gives me composition lessons, sort of, but he gives me theory lessons to the max. But I didn't really develop until I had a North Indian teacher who was the embodiment of compassion. And raga was it. He'd sing something, there was so much love in his voice. I knew music, but I didn't know anything. And I learned to do that, and everything changed. So it's all, it's just all, I sit down and I play the piano, I don't think about anything.
And then there's this composer, Allaudin Mathieu, who found this self-important little twerp in Sebastopol who was thought he was going to be Van Cliburn or something. And
thank God, I saved you. I saved you.
Actually saved my life back then, and gave me the whole Morales mistake to foist upon my future wife. But I want to say too, after that, all of that loveliness, the project that we have coming up, when Allaudin talks about taking influences from all these people, it becomes a part of you. The people who make an imprint upon you. And I know for both of us, I could probably speak that the music that we learn, it's like you're having a conversation with Bach, with Chopin. At a certain point, you sort of become colleagues through time, because we speak the same language, and we hope that what we're leaving behind, future generations pick up, and we're having conversations with them down the road. And this the new piece that it's a Piano Sonata 2022 is the title, 3 movements. And at the time of this recording, that we're doing this video, I'm putting in about 2 or 3 hours a night working on the piece and developing it. And I can say that with great anticipation, it's a wonderful tapestry. The name Bachmaninoff came up in one of our discussions, but it's not just that, but by the way, it's not just Bill Evans, it's not just Stan Kenton, and by the way, it's none of them really, because it's Allaudin's voice, and I suppose like looking at a tapestry where you see familiar things that look like somebody else, but the weaver, it's their voice, and that's the magic of, for example, with this piece for me that I'm seeing. It's there's moments of ecstasy, moments of humor, moments of a little terror, anticipation, but it's a fabulous narrative. I mean, in this humble interpreter's opinion.
Speaking of the assimilation of influences, I think we're social animals by birth. We grow up in families and tribes and cultures, and even the most hermetic of us are influenced by who we've met. Even the animals we've met, even the trees we've met, we're influenced by what's around us. And everybody has their own way of absorbing those influences. Like you are the voice of your mother and father and your family, whether you like it or not. Even if you reject them, or even if you think you love them to pieces, but you're loving like them, they are you, and so is everybody you've ever met. And so it's this back to the sieve. It's that what catches, and what passes, passes. And if you're looking for what's wise, what's of benefit to others, what's useful to keep, if you're looking for it, it makes the process conscious. And that's what I try to do for readers.
The name of that book once more?
I've been saying, I want to read that book. Definitely want to read that book.
The Shrine Thief.
Write a good review on Amazon.
Okay, absolutely. Finding Wisdom in a Life of Music.
The Shrine Thief.
Yes, yes.
And the mystery of the title is explained in the first few pages.
Mm-hmm. Which was fun. I enjoyed that very much. And actually looking forward to seeing that spot on a walk when I see you in August.
Oh, you may.
I hope to.
Yeah.
I wish
Coleman
I had
Bark.
I wish
Coleman
I had a
Barks.
copy.
I twisted his arm, and he said he wrote something for me. He said a new book by William Allaudin Mathieu is always a cause for rejoicing. Ooh, that was a nice blur, was it not? Terry Riley wrote, in these pages, one of the best loved and most thoughtful musicians of our era recounts stories of family, friends, colleagues, lovers, and mentors. From Stan Kenton to Pandit Pranath, the fast-paced stories keep coming. He shares what it feels like to pass forward his hard-won discoveries, made in part through the powerful geometries of music. Written in soul-lifting prose, The Shrine Thief is a thrilling memoir of a master musician's adventure in music and life. And Mitchell Thomas Show, who's a teacher of ecology, has written a wonderful book called To Know the World, and is a friend and student of mine, wrote, The Shrine Thief is a narrative of wisdom transmission for all readers, an illuminating, gripping, and inspiring memoir. Read it and your life will have new meaning. Woof.
What responsibility you have.
Really, it's been such a pleasure and thrill for me. Aside from meeting you now through Zoom, but listening to you, you have inspired me because I think I've been on a quest for 70 years and I look forward to the rest of my years.
Lily, it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
And before you play us off, Hal, let's take care of a little piece of business here for our viewers. If you like this video and would like to see more, please subscribe on our YouTube channel to Whipmo, WHIPMO, which is on your screen now. And we will make sure that you hear from us again and frequently.